Summary. The group finally reach 5 pebbles. Will the iterator be able to cure Hunter? Chapter 20, 5 Pebbles. Hunter woke up in incredible pain. His back pulsed agony through his body as he spasmed on the floor. His sight was blurred, his ears were ringing, and he felt nausea building deep in his gut. He tried to scream, but no sound came out as he choked on air. Vaguely, he heard panicked yelling in the background as 2 pairs of arms wrapped around him, but he could not make out a single word on account of the shrill ringing in his ears. On his back, he could feel appendages trying to grow out of him as the illness roots deep inside him pushed further into his body. He felt weak and helpless, just clinging to his failing consciousness was taking everything he had. A rough cough left him with something moving through his throat and getting spat out on the floor, leaving a burning sensation throughout his esophagus. Please, help, Hunter finally managed, his words not much more than a rough whisper. 1 pair of arms left him as the other arms moved to support his legs and the lump-free part of his back, picking him off the ground. White fur enveloped his blurry vision as he felt something rumble against him. He did his best to rumble back. The odd floaty feeling in his body came back, and the arms around him gripped slightly tighter to stop him from floating out of his arms. The floaty feeling was the same he had felt when his father let him stay in his chamber while he worked. Hunter would fly up to his creator and snuggle into his arms as he stroked his fur gently. He whimpered at the thought of never getting to see his parent again and tightened his grip on Survivor. He coughed again, another throb of intense pain flying through his body. With a tremble, he cuddled further into Survivor's warm fur for comfort. His mate purred in response, hugging him closer. He chirped weakly, feeling his consciousness leave him. He didn't want to feel asleep. He was too scared of waking up even worse off than he already was, but the allure of sleep, a moment without pain, a moment of peace, called to him. I don't have a lot of time left. If I close my eyes, I might at least fully die in my sleep. It would be painless and easy. With these thoughts in mind, Hunter's eyes slowly slipped shut, and his consciousness left him. Survivor felt his mate go limp in his arms, and he panicked. Hunter? Artificer stopped her guiding and explosively floated back, grabbing onto the pole next to Survivor and looking Hunter over. Survivor's grip on the pole tightened as he shook the unconscious slugcat. There was no reaction. Glimmer whined on his shoulder, and Artificer seemed like she was about to cry. He whimpered before leaning in and putting an ear to his chest. A quiet rattling wheeze, and a very faint heartbeat. He was still alive. But he wouldn't be for long. The sickness was finally claiming him. Hearing Survivor's sigh of relief, Glimmer chirped happily, and Artificer relaxed a smidge as well. They had all gone into quite a panic when they awoke to Hunter convulsing on the floor in agony, his back suddenly having grown several more, smaller lumps, spreading over more of his back. The bigger lump was moving around a lot, pulsating like something inside wanted out. Survivor felt nauseated thinking about what could be trying to burst out of his mate's skin, so he decided to abandon the thought until it became a cause for concern. It won't become a cause for concern, he sternly told himself. They were so close now, and 5 pebbles would cure him. He had to. Moon's overseer popped out of the wall and gestured for the group to go upwards. Artificer kicked off the pipe and grabbed onto the next pole, turning around and waiting for the other 3. Survivor sighed, tightened his hold on Hunter's form, and kicked off the pipe himself. As he flew towards her, Survivor saw Artificer's ear twitch. She turned to her left and flinched suddenly, jumping off the pole as a blue tentacle reached out for her. The beast moved in front of Survivor, and he realized he was floating right to its core. Survivor only just managed to keep himself from yelping in surprise, remembering how they reacted to sound. Glimmer managed to keep quiet as well, but she tightened her hold in panic as the both of them floated towards the creature. Just as he was considering throwing Hunter and Glimmer to the side, sparing them the fate of whatever the blue creature would do to all of them, an explosion sounded off to the side. The creature twitched and quickly moved towards the sound Artificer had made, allowing them to just float past without touching the creature at all. This allowed Survivor to float past, quickly grabbing onto a metal bar sticking out of the wall and climbing towards the pipe Moon's overseer appeared and pointed to. Before he entered, he turned back around, scouting for Artificer. The longer he waited, the more worried he got, but eventually he heard her explosions returning, and before long, she floated into his view. "Let's go, quick!" There was an urgency in her voice, and Survivor could hear the disgusting squishy sound of more of the creatures. He did not need to be told twice, quickly sliding through the pipe to the next room. The next few rooms they were guided through had blue coils that were buzzing with energy. Survivor wasn't sure what they were, but he got the feeling touching them was a bad idea. Artificer seemed to echo this sentiment, carefully moving around them. "I've seen the scavengers utilize these as weapons," Artificer explained. "They'll deliver one hell of a shock if you touch them, let's just say that," she added as she scouted ahead to find the best path for the rest of the group, one requiring as little accuracy in jumps as possible. As they waited for Artificer to return, Survivor wrapped his legs around one of the poles to free both his hands. Glimmer looked down at Hunter and whined, so he reached back and patted her comfortingly. "I know, Glimmer. I know," he mumbled, glancing down at his mate. When sleeping, his mate actually looked peaceful. When he was awake, Hunter's face was always in some way twisted in pain. Though he tried very hard to keep up a strong front and hide it, Survivor had noticed the wince in his every movement and his lethargic breathing when they stopped to rest. For once, Hunter looked relaxed and free of pain. Survivor wasn't sure if he'd ever seen Hunter truly relaxed like this. He'd seen him happy before, sure, but never had he looked this carefree, not even while hibernating. Survivor sighed. If only Hunter were awake, then maybe he could explain the purpose behind some of these rooms. He was created by an iterator and grew up inside one of these superstructures, so he should have some knowledge of how everything works, right? Maybe he even had some knowledge of how they were turning so floaty. How had their weight been reduced to nothing? Survivor hummed, he'd have to ask him if he woke up again. When he wakes up again, he corrected himself, huffing angrily at himself. Hunter would be fine, they would make sure of it, and he would be cured. He abandoned the train of thought as Artificer came back around the corner, grabbing onto a pole in front of him and waving them over. Glimmer chirped, nuzzling into Survivor's cheek in an attempt at comfort. He purred gratefully, held onto Hunter tightly, grabbed the pole, and pushed off towards Artificer. Eventually, as the group moved through rooms, the rooms became more lit, with white walls becoming visible. As Survivor burst through a pipe, he flew into an unrecognizable pattern of red squares in the middle of the room. With a sound akin to glass breaking, the pattern was disrupted as Survivor flew through the cubes, sending them flying all over the place. There were weird tube-shaped creatures in the room, some of them were off-white with blue frills at the end, while others were red with red strands sticking out of their bodies. Glimmer squeaked as one touched her, shying away as far as she could on the limited space Survivor's shoulder brought. He grabbed hold of a pole as Artificer came through, looking around in confusion. "And I thought this place couldn't get any weirder," she mumbled, looking at the next pipe the Overseer pointed towards. Survivor nodded in agreement, floating over to the pipe and going through, with Artificer following close behind. The next room was at least 4 times as big as the last, with more of the red cubes spread around along with more tube-shaped creatures. In addition, many of the same neuron fly Hunter delivered to Moon floated around, except these were shifting colors through red, blue, white, or purple randomly. One flew close to Artificer, and she reached out and grabbed it, studying it closely for a moment. Suddenly, she stuffed it into her mouth. "Hey, what if it's poisonous?" Survivor yelped, reaching out to stop her, but it was already too late. She swallowed the fly and suddenly started glowing. Artificer looked down at herself, humming. "Interesting side effect," she mumbled as Survivor stared in awe. "Did it taste any good?" he asked, reaching out and grabbing one. Didn't taste like much of anything, but it was strangely filling. Swiftly, she snatched another that flew too close. "Here, see if you can get Hunter to eat something." Survivor nodded, swallowed the fly in his hand, and took the offered fly from Artificer's paw. He studied his paw for a moment. He was glowing now too, so it really was a side effect of eating the flies? Interesting. Glimmer seemed hungry as well, snatching a fly out of the air and stuffing it in her mouth, though considering she was already glowing, it didn't seem to change her too much. "Hunter, hey, Survivor whispered softly, gently shaking the slugcat to see if he would wake. Surprisingly, it worked. With a groan of pain, Hunter opened his sunken eyes, and despite the obvious pain he was in, he smiled slightly when he saw Survivor. "We found you something to eat," the white slugcat told him, holding the fly close to his mouth. "You need to eat to keep your strength up, Hunter." He sternly added this when the red slugcat tried to turn away. After a moment, he eventually sighed deeply, taking the fly in his paws and eating it whole. He reacted with great confusion when he found he was glowing, only then seeming to realize the others were as well. They took a moment to eat a few more flies. They staved off hunger well but didn't taste like much of anything. Once Hunter had eaten his fill, he closed his eyes and nuzzled into Survivor, shortly falling asleep once again. Survivor decided to let him rest. He needed to rest, regain his energy, or do anything to help his body try to fight off the symptoms of the illness for as long as possible. Artificer and Survivor shared a nod. Glimmer squeezed Survivor's shoulder. The Overseer appeared to point them in the right direction, and they were off. As they moved through the next pipe, the white, sterilized look of the previous rooms was replaced with a darker pattern on the walls. They floated through a long corridor, and when they started hearing odd sounds, it sounded kind of staticky and unnatural. In the next room from there, the walls were covered in holographic text and schematics, moving rapidly. Survivor tried to focus on some of the text but felt himself getting dizzy when he tried. It wasn't like he could read any of it anyway. The next room had an air of finality to it, like they had finally reached the end of their journey. One thing that had to do with that feeling was probably the massive size of the room, along with the hundreds of flies flying around the circumference of the space. As the group floated around the room, Artificer shared her theory that the big square in the middle probably held 5 pebbles. Survivor couldn't help but agree. If there was ever an area where he would expect a mechanical godlike being to reside, it would be in the midst of this huge room. What also helped her theory was a pipe on the top of the square, possibly the entrance to 5 pebbles. They grabbed onto some poles right above the pipe, crawling down and stopping right at the entrance. Artificer glanced down at Hunter, who had started stirring slightly, then looked up at Survivor. "You ready for this?" she asked, twirling an explosive spear in her paw. "As ready as I'll ever be," he whispered back, feeling nervous but ultimately determined. After a shared nod between the slugcats and Glimmer, they passed through the pipe into 5 Pebbles' room. 5 Pebbles was startled out of his work as a scuttling was heard from the pipe leading to the general systems business. Just a moment later, a beady-eyed beast popped its head out, scanning its surroundings. Another distraction? Figures, he thought, gesturing with his arm as the creature caught sight of him and its eyes widened. It promptly fell to the floor with a yowl as he re-enabled the gravity. The pearls he had been studying fell to the floor to join the rest. His umbilical floated him closer, letting him get a look at the little beasts, plural, now that he looked closer. He didn't recognize the white one, but he had seen the red, scarred beast through his overseers. It wasn't carrying the slag keys, so he hoped they had already been delivered successfully. A lantern mouse, for some ungodly reason, also seemed to be following the beasts around, squeaking in fear as it spotted him looming above them. He didn't need to run a scan on the red one to see it was sick, curled up on the ground, coughing and shivering, not to mention the lumps of rot, the same one spreading through his superstructure, growing along its back. The white beast crawled over and fussed over the other, checking its friend over for injuries. Before 5 Pebbles had a chance to make note of much else, more scuttling was heard, and suddenly another beast joined the other two. Its landing was much more grateful, and it was clear it was older than the other two. It was of a maroon color, more scarred than even the red one. He recognized that one of his overseers had been following it closely ever since the Citizen ID drone started following it. After scanning the room and taking a moment to assess its situation, the little beast hissed at the iterator, lifting its spear threateningly and stepping in between him and the other two beasts. With a huff, he pulled back slightly, the beast lowering its spear a smidgeon. 5 Pebbles was about to speak before remembering the beasts were too stupid to understand him without bearing a mark first. After all, they were the same creature as that small, yellow one that had passed through earlier. Sighing, he lifted the maroon beast first. It yelped in surprise, dropped its spear, and tried to struggle. Its white friend meowed up at them, seeming worried. Focusing his efforts, he granted the beast the mark of communication. With a ping, the beast was dropped to the ground, momentarily dazed. Next was the white one. It didn't struggle as much, but it did whimper in fear and shut its eyes tightly before the mark was granted with another ping. 5 pebbles moved to grant the mark to the red one next, only to realize with a start it already had one. You seem to have been in contact with an iterator before, then, he thought, considering for a moment whether to grant the mark to the lantern mouse, before deciding it would be utter insanity on his part to waste the mark on an even simpler creature than the other beasts already were. Is this reaching you? He started, noting the white and maroon beasts perking up and their ears twitching. Little animals, on the floor of my chamber. I think I know what you all are looking for. He decided to start with the white beast. He had a pretty good guess of what he was after. Little white one, you are looking for your sibling, correct? 5 pebbles floated closer as the beast's face lit up. It responded with various chirps and meows, and he grunted in frustration. If you quiet down, I can tell you about my meeting with the yellow beast, he said in frustration. The maroon-colored beast did not seem to like the way he talked about the yellow creature, baring her teeth and threatening him with her spear again. Thankfully, the white beast was smart enough to chirp something at her, which seemed to calm her down, and nodded at 5 pebbles to continue. Your sibling came through here, trying to communicate something to me via your idiotic, animalistic language. 5 pebbles crossed his arms and frowned as the maroon creature stuck her tongue out at him. I gave it instructions on how to escape this cycle we are all trapped in. Whether the little beast followed these instructions or not, I am not sure. The white beast seemed saddened by these news. The maroon beast's expression softened considerably as it gave the fellow creature a pat on the shoulder and a chirp. I suppose I should give you the same instructions, in case you want a possible clue on how to find your sibling. He sighed, already getting sick of all the talking. Go to the west past the farm arrays, and then down into the earth where the land fissures, as deep as you can reach, where the ancients built their temples and danced their silly rituals. Once he finished the explanation, the white one seemed to be stuck in deep thought. Leaving the white beast to think its situation over, 5 pebbles moved his gaze onto the maroon-colored one, who was still glaring daggers at him in barely disguised anger. 5 pebbles hadn't expected to see the brutal creature so early. Last he'd seen, it had been hanging around Shaded Citadel, and killing helpless scavengers in the dark. Though, he supposed it only made sense for the bloodthirsty creature to eventually find its way to the scavenger city. I expected you would end up here sooner or later. He started, and the beast seemed confused at this, its angry glare lessening slightly. Your journey throughout my facility grounds has been incessantly brought to my attention by my overseers, thanks to the device that follows you. He points to the drone floating next to her. It is the Citizen ID drone of one of my long-departed creators. It seems to have been damaged and imprinted itself with you on reactivation. 5 pebbles explained, hoping it was simple enough for the dumb creature to understand. Thankfully the creature nodded, so he continued. Much of the data on the drone has been corrupted. Allow me to do my duty as an iterator and resync it to my structure. Closing his eyes, he focused as he connected to the drone and got to work. After a moment, it floated back to the beast's side. The maroon creature looked at the drone as it floated around it, its red light flashing as it seemed to scan its surroundings for a short moment. However, if you intend to carry the device around and masquerade as one of my citizens, then perhaps you can at least properly perform your responsibility of tending to this superstructure. He added. The maroon beast seemed intrigued, straightening up slightly. From the glimpses I've been shown of your journey so far, it is apparent you have a need to inflict violence against the scavenger population. From the footage he'd seen from his overseers, it seemed the creature almost harbored a special kind of hatred for the local scavenger population. While I find your way of life appalling, it seems we share a common enemy. The beast perked up, and 5 pebbles could have sworn it started smirking at the thought of killing even more scavengers. A large pack of them has made a home in my city, and have been causing progressive damage to the roof of my structure in their attempts to gather scrap metal and other mechanical parts. His servos whirred in frustration as he recalled the grief and annoyance the scavengers caused him. As my dutiful citizen, I would encourage you to return home to your city and pay them a visit. The beast seemed to get his meaning, tightening its grip on its spear and nodding with a wicked grin on its face. Perhaps in that way, we can both depart from this interaction with something we desire. Last but not least, he turned his attention to the sick, red beast on the floor. The white beast had moved over to the unconscious creature, curling up against it and vibrating loudly. The maroon-colored beast joined in as well, curling up on its other side. In a way, Five Pebbles felt a bit of pity for the red creature. He knew for himself how it felt to be eaten alive by the very illness they both harbored after all. I barely listen to the overseers anymore. I have concluded that the movements of animals on the premises absolutely and completely lack relevance to my endeavors. He started, and the white creature stopped vibrating and turned towards him. Your little red friend, the red beast, has been very persistent ever since they entered my farm arrays. Five Pebbles leaned in closer. They were on an unusually deliberate path. He was traveling in the direction of shoreline when his overseers last saw him carrying the green neuron. Five Pebbles hadn't bothered to follow the beast's journey. He had greater issues to worry about, but considering the slag keys were gone, he couldn't help but hold some hope in his heart. Perhaps Looks to the Moon had gotten the help she needed after he. Now the little beast is here, with the rest of you. He gestured to the other creatures, including the lantern mouse, who looked incredibly confused. The images showed your friend carrying something. The white one's eyes lit up with recognition. Did they give it to Looks to the Moon? Five Pebbles asked hesitantly, almost afraid of actually hearing the answer. The white one chirped, nodding happily, and Five Pebbles felt like a massive weight got lifted off his chest. I hope it was of some help to her, he said quietly, glancing away to stare at one of his walls. Not that I can imagine what one of you could be able to do for one of us, but she needs all the help she can get. Regaining his composure, he looked back at the red creature. It was trembling in its sleep, and the maroon one was trying its best to comfort the beast. Your little red friend and I have something in common, little white creature. We both have something unfortunate growing in us. The white one whined, and the maroon one also adopted a sad expression, giving the red beast a lick on the head as the lantern mouse snuggled into its side. However, I may know of a way to help your friend. Both of the creatures perked up at this. Before I myself was infected with all this rot, I may have been able to fully cure their illness, but at this stage, I can barely help myself. What I can offer is a clearing of most of the infection inside their body. He clarifies, the creature's ears pinned to their heads, but they keep listening. The symptoms the little beast is currently experiencing will never fully go away, even after the procedure, but they will be lessened. Some cycles may be worse, sometimes they may be better. Five Pebbles pauses, gathering his thoughts. Performing the procedure will take a lot of processing power, but considering what the little red beast has done to help Moon, he is willing to at least try to help out. The other problem, of course, is that the procedure will undoubtedly be very painful for such a small creature. I have to warn you, the procedure will be incredibly painful. Five Pebbles explains, and the white and maroon creatures tense slightly, exchanging a glance. With your permission, I can perform the procedure right away. It might save his life. He does not have a lot of time left. He finished, and the beasts nodded. Both creatures turned to each other, chirping and meowing, seeming to be discussing something. After a moment, it seemed to turn into an argument, with hissing and snarling from both sides. Then it died down, and the creatures embraced, vibrating loudly once again. Meanwhile, the lantern mouse was still sitting by the red beast's side, snuggling into its fur and chirping sadly. Was the mouse crying? Five Pebbles found no way to wrap his head around how this ragtag group of animals managed to tame such a skittish creature, adapted for dark environments and running away from anything it perceived as a threat. After a moment, the white creature finally turned to him and nodded with a determined look on its face. Very well, then. Five Pebbles sighed as he picked up the unconscious creature. The mouse that had been resting at his side squeaked and tried to follow, but the maroon creature grabbed hold of it and dropped it on the floor, chirping something towards it. The red creature was lifted to the middle of the room, only for the white one to start meowing and yowling at him, making grabby hands towards its friend. "What is it now?" he asked, frustration building at the beast's indecision. The white beast kept making grabby hands and jumping up and down, so he lowered the red creature down to its paws. Without a second thought, the white animal clambered upwards, grabbing hold of the unconscious creature and hugging them close. "You want to accompany them through the operation?" Pebbles realized, his words less of a question and more of a statement. The creature nodded, snuggling further into its companion's coat of fur. The maroon beast gave 5 Pebbles a glare that said something along the lines of, "Deny him this, and I will end you." A puff of air left the fans on his puppet, sounding like a sigh as he picked up the white creature as well as the red one. "I have to warn you, the chance of you getting second-hand injuries from staying too close is high, if not guaranteed," he said, crossing his arms again. "Are you absolutely sure you want to accompany your friend?" The creature nodded, not seeming to care in the slightest. "Very well then." In some ways, 5 Pebbles supposed he should admire these creatures' unflinching bravery and loyalty. He lifted the two into the air, preparing to burn the rot out of the little beast. As he prepared his processors for the operation, he noticed the maroon creature fidgeting with their spear nervously as they watched. The lantern mouse likewise seemed very stressed, running around in little circles on the floor and chirping helplessly. "For the red beast's sake, I really hopes it stays unconscious throughout all this," 5 Pebbles thought as he took a deep breath, raising his hand. "Prepare yourselves, I am beginning the procedure."